Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive, and this is Preakness week and the final Preakness in the old hilltop and the old grandstand. And folks will be coming in. Hopefully, the weather's going to be a little better than it was in Kentucky 2 weeks ago, where this woman holds court in the best of conditions, the worst of conditions, with jockeys, with tears, with horses, in the mud. Donna Brothers is coming back to Baltimore, and it's my 35th Preakness just on the radio alone. That's not the 10 where I went and drank and hung out in the infield and did all of that stuff. But this will be the last one here, and I guess for anybody that sheds a tear on old buildings and moving traditions, this is it. But I'm old school, Donna. No Derby winner, no bueno for the Preakness for me.
Well, it's always disappointing when you don't get the Derby winner. And now this is going to be out of the last 4 years, this year included, half of them. We haven't had the Derby winner. You go back to Rich Strike in 2022. But at the same time, in horse racing, it's still a big deal. For a horse to win a grade one, it's the highest level of racing. And so it still holds weight on who's going to be three-year-old champion, who's going to be horse of the year. And the other thing that it does is, while for sure we don't have the possibility of a triple crown on the line, is it will also make it interesting for the Belmont Stakes. So whoever wins the Preakness Stakes, in theory, is going to tee off against the Kentucky Derby winner in the Belmont Stakes. And so not only is it still a great race, it's a race of serious consequence with some good horses in it. In fact, the favorite from the Kentucky Derby, Journalism, is back. They just announced a couple of days ago that they were definitely going to go with him. They were sort of, now I don't want to say they were on the fence, but they just wanted to see how he was behaving after the race. How was his energy? How was his weight? All of those things. And so they green lighted it a couple of days before entries. And so we're excited to have the favorite, Journalism, back into the Preakness Stakes.
I don't like to delve into the horse racing 100 or the 101 with you, but I really want to keep it basic in this particular one because, I mean, your broadcasts are for sort of everyone. Somebody just tunes in once a year, but what's happened here with this 2 week thing and soup to nuts concern for the horses, their value, their ability to be effective, but the whole Dan Fogelberg song of, once in a chance and once in a lifetime, this is the only chance to win a Triple Crown for half the trainers, half the owners, the investors to say, this isn't good for the horses. This isn't good for my horse. You have ridden thousands of horses. You understand the psychology of this and where the money is in the business of this, but this has clearly changed dramatically, even from spend a buck 40 years ago.
Yeah, I think just because something is a long-standing tradition doesn't mean that it needs to remain. I'll give you a perfect example of that. Why do we still make the penny when it costs us more than a penny to make the penny? And everybody is annoyed by pennies. The only time you really like a penny is when you find one heads up and it's a shiny copper penny, right? And so I think we need to get away from the penny, stop making that. And I think that we need to change the spacing of the Triple Crown races. Ideally for me, I'd like to see it be Kentucky Derby first Saturday in May, Preakness Stakes first Saturday in June, and then, of course, the Belmont Stakes the first Saturday in July. The other thing that would enhance is the card that you're going to see on the undercard at Pimlico. So the purses are so high during the Keeneland Spring Meet, and we go straight from that Keeneland Spring Meet into Kentucky Derby week. And between those two, I guess, sessions of racing, it really cannibalizes a lot of the good horses racing in America at pretty much every level. So whether it's 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds or turf horses or older mares or older boys, either way, it takes a lot of those good horses away. And so it diminishes the card that you're going to be able to have at Pimlico 2 weeks after the Kentucky Derby. And I think it diminishes the card that you're going to have at the Belmont Stakes later too. So I think not only would it enhance, and by the way, it doesn't make it easier. So let's say that you do come back a month later to run the Preakness Stakes instead of 2 weeks later. You're going to have a whole lot more horses from the Kentucky Derby come back into the Preakness Stakes. So this year we're going to have a 9-horse field. The maximum capacity at Pimlico for the Preakness Stakes is 14 horses. And I think that if they spaced it out 4 weeks, you would have a pretty much maximum capacity field every time. So it's not only going to not make it easier, I think it's going to make it tougher. And so, yeah, sometimes things need to change. It was interesting the other day, Nestor, I was on NTRA call. That's the National Thoroughbred Racing Association. And they had Steve Asmussen, Hall of Fame trainer, Brendan Walsh, he's a youngish trainer from Ireland, and Dwayne Lucas in that order. And they asked each of them separately, do you think the spacing needs to be changed? And essentially Asmussen's was like, I think we should honor tradition. Same with Brendan Walsh. It's not really for me to say, but it is the tradition. Then 89-year-old Wayne Lucas, who's won every single one of these races, never the Triple Crown, but has won every single one of them. And in fact, he's won the Preakness Stakes 6 times, said absolutely it needs to change. I don't think that it's the right spacing for horses anymore. And so if somebody like Wayne Lucas, who you don't get steeped in tradition any more than him, can understand why it would be beneficial for not just horse racing, but specifically for the horses, I have a tough time understanding why more people don't see that.
What is the faction that's fighting against this?
The traditionalists, the people who don't want to see any change. So essentially what they say is, well, it's just going to make it easier for the next horse to win the Triple Crown. And then is it really the Triple Crown? But let's go all the way back to Sir Barton, who won the initial Triple Crown in 1919. Now, he didn't get credit for that until hindsight. I think it was something like 1930 before a turf rider said, well, another horse has already won these 3 races. But he won the Kentucky Derby, and 4 days later, after he trained on a train up to Baltimore, he won the Preakness Stakes. And then in between the Preakness Stakes and the Belmont Stakes, he ran in another stakes race in New York, and he won that. And so in the span of 32 days, he won all 3 legs of the Triple Crown and another race in between. So the one thing that has remained consistent with the Triple Crown is that it's changed. It's done that for years and years. And in fact, this year, again, just like last year, the test of the champion won't be the test of the champion because the Belmont Stakes is going to be run at Saratoga again, and it's going to be 1.25 miles. Next year, we're going to have the second leg of the Triple Crown run at Laurel. So the consistent thing about the Triple Crown is that it is consistently changed. And I think that we need to keep the horses in mind and make a positive change. But again, I think it's just the traditionalists.
Donna Brothers is here. She works for NBC. They're going to be in town doing the Preakness here this week. I hear so much about the television part of this and the money part of this, and that Belmont doesn't want to move. Would that be Belmont would be the first thing that has to happen, right? Belmont would have to accept.
No, I disagree. I
No?
think if the people in Baltimore changed their race to a month later, then that's going to put Belmont in a position to be irrelevant or change their race. So if they change their race to a month later, now that means the Belmont Stakes is going to run a week later. And if the horses that ran in the Kentucky Derby come back into the Preakness Stakes, they are not going to run a week later. And so the Belmont Stakes either becomes irrelevant or they have to change.
For the Baltimore side of this, I've spent most of the last 35 years. Can we keep the race? What's going on with the race? Who's going to own the race? Is Bruno Mars playing this year? Is the Derby winner coming? Is the Derby winner coming here part of this? Has to be solved in order for this thing to be worth it for our state, our city, what we're doing, tearing down something, building something, trying to build the industry back around it. While I'm standing in front of the baseball team's trying to figure out how to build baseball back here as well. I live here 365, and racing kind of comes and it goes, and you come and go, and your team comes in for the Preakness, and you've seen all sorts of levels of deterioration of the track, of investment, of the crowds, of all of that. We're trying to build this back. And I think from a civic standpoint, if I'm the governor, if I'm the mayor, if I'm in front of this, just a loudmouth on the radio for 4 decades, I would say, heal the horse racing industry as well, because I don't think there's any way to build this in this spit start. We might have the winner, we might not. I don't think it was built upon that back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s when it became great.
Well, Nestor, it doesn't benefit us at NBC Sports either. When we go into a Preakness Stakes with no Kentucky Derby winner coming into the Preakness Stakes, we go into the Preakness Stakes in a budget deficit, because that show and how much money is put into that show is calculated around us having at least a double crown on the line, right? So at least the Kentucky Derby winner coming back. And so we also go into it with a budget deficit because of the fact that sponsors aren't as keen to sponsor the second leg of the Triple Crown if in fact it's not a potential second leg of the Triple Crown for the horse who won the Kentucky Derby. And so I feel you. I feel Baltimore. One of the things I love about Baltimore, though, is that you are, yes, your show is Baltimore positive, but you are also Baltimore strong. And so you all still come out in support of the race, and it's still a people's party. And I do know that the horsemen still love to go there because of the proximity of the stakes barn and all the horses and the trainers that are there together. And it's a real show of camaraderie there. So I know that we love to come to Baltimore no matter what. Hopefully the fans can understand that it's still a great race, but I'm with you. It would be better if it was more likely to be the Kentucky Derby winner coming back year after year instead of occasionally.
Well, I know you live in Kentucky, and I've been to 10 derbies, and I never knew what the Oaks was till the first time I went to the Oaks. Like, I didn't know it was a thing. And then I got there, they were trying to build a Black Eyed Susan here and build around. You all will be broadcasting on Friday here as
Mhm.
well. There's just and slots, casinos, who own the track, Laurel, just all purses, year-round racing, all of the things that went into Maryland racing that you leave behind and you come in and you sort of helicopter in once a year to the Maryland situation. I've always pulled for this, and I wish more people bothered you and Randy and Tarico and all of you to want to come on and talk more racing. And I'm doing the Lexington crab races here. Can you give me a vision in the Kentucky area of what it means when kids don't go to school on Friday? It really is a civic holiday. You're smiling, but that's what we want it to be here. The way
Yeah.
baseball opening day has a little cachet here in that way that's kind of even been tarnished over the last 30 years. But it's a friggin' holiday. This is the kickoff of summer here. And this is our Super Bowl. It's the Preakness. I'm vigilant about it, and if I sound a little antsy about it, it is because we really are at that moment of transition. This is the last one, the last time the toilets are going to flush. I want to make sure that 5 or 10 years from now, we're in a better spot for all of it, for television, for the industry, because it's such an important race for the industry.
Yeah, let's back up to the Black Eyed Susan and the Kentucky Oaks, like you just talked about. If we do this 1 month spacing, we can actually make a Phillies Triple Crown, right? So I think that the Phillies Triple Crown is also going to start to be a bigger thing, because if you're running the Black Eyed Susan a month after the Kentucky Oaks, the top three finishers are going to come back. But you're not going to get the fillies from the Kentucky Oaks, probably not the top five finishers from the Kentucky Oaks, to come back in 2 weeks until you can start building that to be a legitimate Triple Crown for the fillies. And so, yeah, in Kentucky, I laughed about the Friday off because kids in Kentucky are shocked when they learn that not all the schools in America are closed on the day before Derby. They just don't even understand this. But honestly, when
Be
you
like a
think
kid from Maryland thinking a woman from Kentucky can just go get crabs down the
about
street in
it, sure.
Bardstown Road, and it's just they're only here. That's
Yeah,
the
it
only
doesn't
place we get
happen.
them.
Mhm. Yeah. So honestly, in Kentucky, though, it's really just a logistics thing. First of all, half the teachers are going to take off because they're going to the Oaks. Half the principals aren't going to be there to punish them because they're going to the Oaks. And then not only that, just trying to get around the town, the city. It's pretty crazy. It's a bit of a madhouse on both Oaks and Derby. And so I think they started giving them the day off of school because attendance from teachers and students was very low. And it just seemed to make more sense.
Okay, well, there. I was hoping for something that was a better tradition than that, but nonetheless, Donna Brothers is here. They're running a race, and you've actually, this has been my favorite month of maybe my career, to have people like you say journalism is alive, journalism's in this, journalism's on the lead. I still believe in journalism, and maybe even after the Derby run in the mud, and I know you were back with a Venezuelan. I'm a Venezuelan bloodline, so when there's a Venezuelan jockey that wins, I sort of celebrate that sort of thing. But journalism is going to just be a super duper favorite on Saturday, right?
Journalism is alive and well, Nestor. I'm here to report. He is going to be he's the 8-5 morning line favorite. And again, narrowly defeated, finished second in the Kentucky Derby. But here's a Baltimore horse for you. River Thames is also in there. And the restaurant, I can't remember the name of it. It used to be open on Thames Street down there in Inner Harbor, Baltimore area. And it was a place that I would go eat And so I know that there's Tim Street right there in Inner Harbor area of
We call it
Baltimore.
Thames here because ain't nobody here been to the UK. So
Yeah, well, they have to call it Tim's now.
that we'll know you're from out of town if you do that, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm still gonna go with Tim's, because that is the pronunciation of it. And he's 9-2. He's a horse that I think has a good chance in there. Rad Ortiz rides. He finished I think it was third in the Bluegrass Stakes behind East Avenue and Burnham Square. So yeah, I mean, it's still a really, really good race.
When you walk out of Pimlico for the last time, and I remember one of the first times I went there, I saw Howard Cosell in the parking lot. So you never forget as a kid when you see Howard Cosell and
That's where I met Howard Cosell, was at the Preakness Stakes the year that Cowboy Jack Cannell won it. So yeah, we were probably both there at the
mine
same.
was probably like Ferdinand, maybe 85, 6, 7, somewhere in there. Ali
No, well before
Sheba.
that, because I was 16 years old and I was the class of 84, so this would have been somewhere around 1982.
You rode at Pimlico, did you? Yes?
No. I
Never.
mean,
Oh,
did I ever ship in to ride a race? Maybe, but I didn't ever ride there. I don't think I, no, I don't think I ever even shipped in to ride a race at Pimlico. But I went there as a 16-year-old with a friend of mine who was going from Kentucky up there and she needed help driving. And so I was like, yeah, count me in. I'll be your wingman.
they had me run a bag of film photographers down to the News American, and they said just drive in at 3:30 on Preakness Day in 1985. You know, I just got my driver's license, so you know, for me that the iconic part of Pimlico and being a Baltimorean, and for someone like you that's always been into horse racing and knowing how big this race is, and now being a part of being there to greet the winners the last 20 years on the backside, what is your vision of when you come back that it's going to look different? I think we've all had the stadium that went away and the arena that went away and the thing that went away. For horse racing, this is a unique thing to go away and come back, and it ain't going to look the way it looks now or the way it ever looked. It's going to look a lot different.
Well, I'll tell you something I learned during COVID, Nestor, and that is that, so I covered the Kentucky Derby in the first Saturday in September in 2020, during the COVID year. And it was a surreal experience because we had no fans and limited number of connections from each starter in the Kentucky Derby. We did have a full card of racing that day. But what I realized and witnessed before, during, and after the race is that the emotions were still just as strong. So while it's great to have 150,000 people watch you win a race like the Kentucky Derby, it meant just as much to those people who won it when there were 50 people there to watch them. And the people, the connections that were beaten that year, felt the same wind out of their sails defeat. That, so what I'm trying to get at is that it's the passion of the race, and it's the uh, what it means to people in their hearts. And that's never going to change. It doesn't matter if they do it in a parking lot. It doesn't matter if they do it under tents. It doesn't matter if they do it in front of a grand palace. That passion is going to be there from all the connections. And so I don't know what the new layout is going to look like, but I know that all the emotions are going to remain.
Well, my emotions will be the same next year. Same time next year, we're like that old Alan Alda movie. Once a year, Donna Brothers joins us here from NBC. You and your crew, you guys do such a.
Hopefully I never show up pregnant, Nestor.
Well, I know that. Yeah, but you know, each and every year you come in and the connection stories, I just want to say you all do just an amazing job because I helicopter into your sport as someone that sits here and talks baseball and football and a whole bunch of other issues. I did sports exclusively first 20, 25 years of my career. But I respect the journalism. I mean, all the way down to Kornacki inside the clubhouse and trying to learn every part of the industry and then teach people in that 2, 3, 4 hours. Bob Costas was a part of it for years. Just you know, getting everybody sharp for the race here in Baltimore specifically, where people don't eat, breathe, and sleep the form like maybe they do in Kentucky where you are, but still want to be informed and want to know what's going on. You guys just do a great, great job. Keep up the great work. Keep coming in, and we're going to build the
Thanks, Nestor.
track
I
back
appreciate
bigger
it.
and
Hey, I
better.
have to brag on my team for 1 second because Lindsay Shanzer is our producer and she does an incredible job. She's been producing the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup for the last few years. And as you know, we started off this year's Kentucky Derby coverage on NBC with Mike Tirico hosting, and then he had a nut allergy reaction. And so 25 minutes into him hosting, Lindsay had to pull Ahmed Fareed out of the field, who had gone from hosting the undercard to now being a field reporter. Ahmed Fareed had to come in and host. And then field reporters like Kenny Rice and Brittany Urton and Nick Luck had to pick up those pieces that Ahmed was going to do and now he couldn't do, and it was seamless. And that's because we do have such a talented team, yes, but they are just so well prepared for them to be able to just step in and do somebody else's job. And then of course Lindsay Shanzer, who's conducting everything, you'll never see her sweat. She will just seamlessly go, okay, that's not going to work, we'll do this. So we do have a fabulous team. Thank you for letting me
Well,
say.
it shows. It shows. It shows every single year, and I'm always impressed by it. And I always put it on early because I always want to be boned up that when the race happens, I know what's happening and I know all the storylines. And that's the beauty of being a horse racing fan. In addition to being able to wager on it from time to time, Donna Brothers is here. Speaking of wagering, our friends over at Timonium, Costas is opening in the racetrack at Timonium, right next to the OTB. So I just wanted to give them some love. No crabs over there, just the crab cakes. You got to come to Dundalk and get the real crabs. Donna Brothers can do that anytime here, but she's fit. You can go out to DonnaBrothers.com and read about her fitness stuff. One day there'll be a hot yoga thing. There'll be a class where you and I will be under the same roof. I hope it is.
One day, Nestor, one day.
Donna Brothers of NBC Sports, always great to stop by and join us. She'll be here in Baltimore all weekend long, and we'll be maybe with journalism on the backside greeting winners. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Taos in Baltimore. Stay tuned all week long. Lots of Preakness stuff. We had Dick Girardi on, Randy Moss. Lots of stuff, lots of things to talk about. Larry Colmus and others for Preakness 150. Let's make it the best one ever. Stay with us.